Hey,
Yay, it worked. Hey,
can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Is there a fire behind you?
There's a fire behind me. I'm in the
Wow.
wilderness.
You're in the wilderness, in Vermont,
I am,
which
yes.
is kind of the wilderness.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are watching and joining us, Katherine is the principal oboe of the Baltimore Symphony, and we've known each other for 20 some odd years.
More than that, yeah.
Okay, we're not going to talk about how long that was. But like in all the time I've known you, we've never talked about, like, I don't know your origin story. Like how did you come to the oboe? Like, how did that happen?
Oh, I came to the oboe through public school. And I grew up very strangely in Maryland, not very far from where I live now. In Ellicott City, Maryland, which is about 15 minutes west of Baltimore City, and I started the oboe in public school there, and I basically learned everything in public school. Yeah.
Like, did you come from a musical family, or is it just like part of music
No,
ed?
no. My parents are scientists and physician types,
right.
and they were very opposed to the oboe because they thought it was. I don't think they understood the value of it. And I think they were concerned that it was not a very good way to make money, and that's a valid concern for sure.
It's a legitimate concern, yeah.
And I actually went to Curtis. I cut school a lot when I was a teenager, and I went to Curtis and they didn't know, and I took an audition for Curtis and I got in, and I came home and told them I was quitting high school, and they were just mortified.
Just freaked out. How old were you when you auditioned for Curtis?
I was 16. And
super young.
Yeah, which actually I don't think it was that young at the time. I think I think they've increased the age limit now, but I think for the time it was maybe just a little young, not that young.
Wow. So like did you know that you wanted to be a musician at that point, or was it just, was there like a whole series of events?
I guess I was kind of maybe a little bit of a weird kid, and I really loved the piano, and I played the piano all the time. We had this Yamaha upright, and I just played it all the time, and my parents were always telling me to stop playing it because I didn't know anything, and I never really studied the piano with anyone until I was like 15. So I was really behind, and I knew that I wouldn't. You have to have a real technical background from a young age, I think, to play the piano well.
Right.
And I didn't have that, and I knew that, but the oboe is sort of a very different instrument, and you can develop a lot later and be fine. So I thought there was more hope there, and so that's what I pursued to be a musician.
I didn't have odds at that point.
I didn't have the sort of technical limitations on the oboe that I did as a 15-year-old. So.
But you knew you wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, I was always, I'm sure like you, I was always just really taken by it,
Just so there was like no other option in life in a way, or like, I guess you don't know when you're that young, do you? Like
No, I knew that's what I wanted to be. I have this memory of this very embarrassing moment in 8th grade in the like guidance counselor's office with my mother, and the guidance counselor. Yeah, like they're preparing you for high school and your class stuff, and they're like, what classes should you take? And my mother was sitting there with me. I don't know why, but they're like, what are your interests? I said, music. And what do you do in your spare time? I said, well, piano and oboe, and and I study music theory, and I go to the library and I look at scores and try to find recordings, and the guidance counselor said, well, maybe you should study music, or maybe you'd be interested in a career in music. And my mother said, no, that wouldn't be okay. I remember that.
So funny.
It was sort of an awkward moment. And I remember knowing at that time, yes, that's what I want to do. But, clearly my mother thought that was a poor idea. So
yeah. But you did go to Curtis, and what was that experience like? Was it, I guess there were younger students at that time, but still that's early in life to be determined to know.
Yeah, I think so many of us were young there at that time, especially in the wind department. I know they've raised the age limit now, but I didn't feel especially young. I was a little young, but not that young. I think there was one person younger than I was. Mimi, the flute player, was definitely
right. Yeah.
I think Mimi's like 3 years younger than I am. So, she was the young one, and I was not particularly young.
Right. So what did you do after Curtis? What was that
You
whole process?
know, there were a few real lean, difficult years after Curtis. I think I'm sure you remember I spent some time in your basement.
Yeah, I do
You know, I
remember
was
that.
kind of in and out. Yeah,
Hmm.
I thought your apartment was so awesome. That apartment was it like 620 and a half, the
It
half floor,
was.
right?
God, you have a good
On
memory.
Third
Yeah,
Street.
on Third Street.
Yeah, it's awesome purple and black
Hmm.
like iron work or something. It was so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, you know, there was one audition for orchestras the year that I graduated, and it was for the Minnesota Orchestra, and I was the runner-up. And
Mm,
but you know, runner-up doesn't get you anywhere.
no,
So I was unemployed when I graduated, like a lot of
like
musicians.
everyone.
Yeah, and and you know, my parents really didn't think that was cool, and they weren't giving me money because they thought, you know, it really wasn't cool. And so I was doing freelance work and I taught piano, and you know, I actually made a fair bit of money as a young person playing like piano accompaniments for people, like solo ensemble festivals for
That's so
kids.
interesting. I had no idea you did that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the piano was kind of an easier way to make money, you know, like even though I wasn't like particularly good at it, but you know, I did that and I taught kids and I practiced and I played
Mm,
basically whatever gig I could get. I remember some really like kind of low end church gigs with Paul and
mhm,
those yeah
mhm.
I really remember those well actually you know and I did whatever I could and I had a then I got a job playing second oboe in the it was called Concerto Soloists then
Mhm. It's
in
called what?
Philadelphia uh,
Chamber
Chamber Orchestra Philadelphia now.
Philadelphia. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so I played second oboe there, and then I got a job playing second oboe and English horn in the Savannah Symphony for like half a season. Um,
Hmm.
and I realized very quickly that I couldn't live in the South. It didn't
Hmm.
do well, and I came back to Philadelphia. Well, I mean, I needed to come back anyway. And you know, and I had like a few. You know, I think I had 3 or 4 years of freelance work that got increasingly better. Certainly, the freelance world is very difficult, and when you start at the bottom of it, it's hard. But it got
Hmm.
better. And then I ended up with a job in the Richmond Symphony, where we both were, I think, at different times. And,
Yes.
and then after that, I ended up in Baltimore. So, and I still am here.
And you still are
Yeah.
there. Well, I think it's an interesting story because I think a lot of people who are not musicians assume there's like a linear process and you get out of school, you graduate, you get a job, you work your way up the ranks, but it's not linear in any sense, right?
No, and there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. You know, I don't think that anything is very predictable for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had so many friends from school that I thought were so fantastic, just
Mm-hmm.
unbelievably fantastic that, you know, never ended up with huge jobs. Um, and
So what do you think separates, because there are a lot of remarkable musicians who came out of Curtis, our school, and some people have done really well and some people not so much or have moved on to other things. Like what differentiates those people given that they're all incredibly talented? Do you think it's like a personality thing where you just you have
well, I think
this
there's, you know, there's
intuitiveness or
definitely you have to. There's some element of the willingness to play the game, and how much are you willing to play the game, and how much do you want to do that? And I think some people are more into that than others, but I think there's also just a tremendous amount of luck and
mm-hmm.
marketing and image and all these things play a big role.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not something that I can predict. You know, like I can't see a young person and say, oh, they're going to be
Right,
huge,
right.
you know, or oh, they're not going to, you know, you never
Mm-hmm.
really.
No, it's so interesting. Yeah, as you said, there's like no rhyme or reason to it. But I'm always looking for like the thread that runs through for people who I don't. It just seems like perseverance to a certain degree. Like you're going to keep doing this until something happens, but that doesn't hold true for everyone. So I don't know. It's always
Yeah.
an interesting question. Um, so I was like reading your bio and some interesting things popped up that I just want to ask you about as a person.
Oh, which one? Because I made kind of a joking bio once, but I deleted it very quickly.
Oh,
but...
okay. Was Greenland part of the joke, or did that?
Oh no, that's real. That's real.
So tell me about playing in Greenland.
So I have a wonderful colleague in the Baltimore Symphony who plays in the oboe section, and we haven't played much recently, but we had an oboe trio, you know, for two oboes and English horn, and he's a real go-getter, and he there was a direct flight on Air Greenland from Baltimore, BWI, to Greenland for I think 6 months, and he really just like jumped on that bandwagon, and he got in touch with all the people there and made calls, and Air Greenland sponsored us to go over there. And I mean, I think we were like the first oboe chamber music, or the first American chamber musicians like to ever be there. It was really wild. I mean, we played these concerts in like freezing churches, and the audience was very, very appreciative. And I mean, I would love to go back, but the flights were canceled like the next season. They didn't exist anymore.
So you were kind of lucky that happened in that one season.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a highlight for sure.
I was thinking that couldn't possibly be a real thing, but it turned out
that it's real. I think it's all real. It's probably all approximately real. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question. So you've done a lot of premieres with composers, and I wanted you to sort of describe, like, what's the process of working on a new piece? I mean, you learning the piece, of course, but if it's a premiere and it's being created for you, I mean, what's the interaction? What's the collaboration with the composer?
Well, I've done a lot of that lately, especially because of where we are in the world, and I'm basically playing the oboe by myself in my house. So once you kind of get a reputation for being willing to do this, because a lot of people aren't that into it, or I learn music pretty quickly, so people will send me music, and I'll correspond with them, and if it strikes me at the right moment, even if I just have it, I'm talking to you on an iPad now. I keep all of my music in an iPad. I have like thousands of pieces. Do you use one?
No.
Oh yeah, so I just have thousands of pieces in here, and if something like, it's kind of amazing because you can just press the button and it's
yeah
for you, so it's easier for me to keep track of everything now. But I mean, so like I've done premieres that people have paid for, like like real big ones, and a lot of smaller ones too. But for my instrument, which is not traditionally known as a solo instrument, if you want to play concerts, you want to play a bunch of concerts in COVID, you have to be willing to play new things, or things that are not standard repertoire. So I've sort of embraced that, because I enjoy playing, and I enjoy the real life connection with the composer, because certainly all these famous pieces that I've studied all my life, you have to think and wonder, what did the composer want, and how would they want that? I'm this interpreter, this sort of like translator almost.
Right.
But so now I love being able to actually speak to somebody and say, is this how you want that? Or, is this better? Is that better? What are you going for? I don't get this. So I really like having that interaction with somebody. And that actually helps me play other music, where I don't have.
Have you ever changed a composer's mind? Like, have you ever said, like, this is not playable, or this is not idiomatic, or this just isn't?
No, I really try not to say that, for several reasons. But one of the biggest ones, I guess, is the oboe was not used virtually at all in the 19th century. It was, it was replaced by the clarinet. Certainly, drums didn't touch it outside of an orchestra. We have the Robert Schumann romances, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I think there was, and those were written for somebody that didn't actually even play them in his lifetime, because they said it was too difficult. So I think I really try to push back against this idea that, something is too difficult. So I really try to take it upon myself to find a way to play it. I would rather go there and struggle with it and practice a lot, if I think the music is worth it, before telling somebody no. So I really try not to do that. And it's funny, about 2 years ago, I premiered this fantastic concerto by Kevin Putz, and I remember when I was working on the very beginnings of it with him, I played it through, and I wouldn't say, this is too hard, and he's like, well, this sounds too hard. Like, no, I have to work on it still. Let me practice it. It's just too soon, and I don't have it yet. But he actually wanted to change things to make it so that it was like more easily rendered, so he was coming at it at from a totally different perspective than I was. But I try not to say this is too difficult. I did say to someone recently, she had written a ton of really, really high notes, like that I don't even know how to finger, and I said, and she was having trouble having people play the stuff, and I said, well, this may be a point of contention for people, like this may be off-putting, like I could try to do it, but I think that may be off-putting, but you know, I really try not to say it's too hard.
That's generous of you, because I don't know. So, I mean, sometimes composers, like for instruments that are not mainstream, but you know, that they might not know as well technically from a technical standpoint. I think composers might have a hard time writing for instruments that they don't know what the demands are or what the challenges are.
Yeah, you know, I guess I did say to somebody once, they played, it was an orchestra piece, and they wrote a bunch of really fast stuff, super high, like that was in unison with the flute. And I said, you know, do you really want this? Like, I could spend a lot of time practicing this, but nobody's going to hear it. Why don't you write it in an octave that's idiomatic? I guess I have said that before.
Yeah. No,
but you know, for a solo thing, I would take a different approach probably.
Yeah. So, like, what kind of music do you gravitate toward? I mean, do you have a preference in terms of repertoire or like era, or is just good music good music? I mean, some people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's probably how you feel, right? Like, you conduct a really wide variety of stuff, right? I mean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
I feel like if you do the same thing all the time, especially in an instrument like mine, which is, you know, most people consider very limited in repertoire. You have to, I mean, like, I'll practice, you know, I practiced yesterday all day Telemann, and then today I didn't feel like practicing Telemann, right? Like, I was like, well, I did that yesterday, and, you know, I'll do a little bit of this hard passage that I need to work on, but I'm going to practice something else. Just because for me, it's like, I don't want to eat the same food all the time either. So
no, that makes sense. Yeah.
I try to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a very unusual time in that I can kind of choose what I want to practice, and in a lot of ways choose what I want to play in a way that I don't always get to. So I'm actually really enjoying that and looking for new things to play.
Yeah, you've been doing all these not solo. I mean, you've been doing these things online, which is kind of remarkable. If you guys haven't seen this, it's kind of cool. But you play the piano and the oboe, not at the same time, but together.
Yeah, I just learned how to do that at the beginning of quarantine. I was, it's funny, my daughter's studying singing, so I, like, you know, accompany her, and I'm like, oh, I can play this on the oboe. And, you know, and then I realized with iMovie that you can kind of line the two things up. And then that sort of spiraled out of control, and I actually got myself a decent microphone, and, you know, so now it sounds a lot better than it did before. And I actually have now a better video program too. So it looks a little bit better. But I've done that, but I also did like 11 concerts in 11 weeks of oboe solo, which I will probably never ever do again in my life. It was a lot of work, but you know, there's opportunity in this situation where we're kind of sitting around in a lonely way, I think, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you an opportunity to sort of reflect and pivot and do the things that, as you said, we don't have time to really do usually. I guess, I mean, how many weeks is Baltimore on? Is it 40 weeks, 42 weeks?
No, we're 52 weeks. We had a huge labor dispute about that about a year ago, but you know, we're a 52-week orchestra, and we've hung on really, we've hung on strong about that. That's important to our orchestra to be full-time.
Right. You know, but that does mean that becomes the focus of your professional work, and that you don't have time to do these other things as much. And now
absolutely.
Sort of flipped around.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I'm basically married to the orchestra. And so when we had this big labor stoppage, we were locked out by our management. We were basically thrown on the street with 10 days notice or 2 weeks notice or something. I started booking all the concerts that I kind of wanted to do, but hadn't been able to do. And so that kind of set me on a path that, you know, it was a very satisfying path, actually, to play stuff because I wanted to, because I finally had time. I was basically unemployed again, you know, after being gainfully employed for 20 years or something. So, you know, so I'm doing more of that now because I booked all these concerts when I was unemployed.
Right.
And I actually really love it. So
what kind of repertoires are you playing right now besides the telephone?
You know, I will play basically anything that strikes me, you know, like strikes me as something that I can do something with. It's become really important to me recently. You know, I know we're not supposed to make political statements, you know, because that's forbidden, but It's
No, you can make political statements. Everyone can.
it's become very important to me to play music by people who aren't dead white men, and it only really, it's sad for me to say this, but it only occurred to me relatively recently. You know, I'm 42 and a half now, and it only occurred to me like in my late 30s that, hey, all this music that I was supposed to be playing, that I've been taught, that all of my colleagues are playing, it's all by dead white men. There are occasionally a few pieces by living white men. A few. I mean, I've commissioned a number of them, and I love them. I love the dead white men. I love the living white men. I'm married to one, but it's also important to me to do, you know, play music by women. I never played a piece by a woman when I was a student. Never.
Really? Well, I mean, that doesn't surprise me so much. No, yeah.
No, I mean, I had a very, very conservative education. You know, that happened last century. You know, my education finished in 1999, and I played. I mean, I never studied with a teacher anything that wasn't by a dead white man. So it kind of only, I don't know how it took me this long to kind of realize that, but that when it struck me, I was like, ooh. I don't like that. So I've really taken it upon myself to try to expand the group of composers that I'm playing. So in terms of what I've been playing lately, I had a recital of all women composers.
Cool.
You know, which maybe seems crazy, and I thought when I first did it, I just came up with the idea, I'm going to play a recital of all women composers, because to kind of make up for all my other repertoire, like maybe I can put a dent in that repertoire somehow. And then I tried to come up with music for it, and I felt so much like it wasn't, I didn't have just one recital's worth of music. Like there were 10 recitals worth of music there, you know, of things that I wanted to play. And it's like, well, why hadn't I seen these things before? Why didn't I know about them? You know, and because we play an instrument with like a poor repertoire, a limited repertoire, and, you know, compared to a pianist repertoire or a violinist repertoire, even a clarinet repertoire, most people would say it's a low quality solo repertoire. Why would we limit ourselves to only certain music? And I found that like once I got past, you know, looking at a certain gender and a certain race, there was a lot of music that was equally good or better. And so I found a lot of pieces that I want to play, and so I'm just kind of working my way through those. And then it occurred to me, well, hey, I don't have to play, you know, music by just white people, you know, and that's pretty cool, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the larger reckoning that arts organizations now are finally coming to, years after you sort of figure this out, is that there is a huge repertoire out there that's been completely marginalized. For, you know, obvious reasons, because they are by, you know, composers of color or women who have been marginalized in the classical music industry.
Well, not just in classical music, it's a societal problem.
It's a societal thing, but I would say that classical music is even more, in a way, conservative in that sense. And those are the kinds of things that we're not exposed to in school.
Right, which is horrifying, actually. I mean, I don't teach very much now, but everyone that I teach now, I make a point of like, okay, well, now we're going to do something by somebody who's alive. And, oh, you've never played a piece by a woman? Well, let me help you with that. You know, you're working on this concerto. Well, you should also be working on this concerto too, you know, after that one. And, you know, this sonata, so that you can understand that there are other people. And I've actually found with like young women students, it tends to be, they tend to really enjoy playing music by women.
That's interesting. That makes sense though, in a way.
No, I think it totally makes sense. I don't know like what kind of books you read. My father always said to me, it's weird. My father always says a lot of things that probably one shouldn't say, but he always said that like he had an easier time reading books by men, that they spoke to him more easily. And that makes sense, right?
That
like
makes sense.
He's a man. And I know that, I mean, certainly I read plenty of books by men, but I do really enjoy, I mean, I feel very taken by many books written by women that, you know, maybe men don't feel that same way because I have a shared experience with them. And so why wouldn't it be the same with art or
Well,
music.
do you think music has a gender? Is that part of the attraction, or is it the gender of the creator? Because
Oh,
I think
I can't say for sure, but I definitely feel that a lot of this music speaks to me. And maybe it would speak to a man too, and maybe they're just, not wanting to do it yet. But I see like a real response in, female students to, when I ask them, hey, can you play this piece? Often, like, it will get them excited in a way that something else hasn't gotten them excited before. And I don't know what the reason behind that is, but it's just a phenomenon that I've experienced.
That's great. I mean, if they feel connection to the composer somehow, because they share some commonality of experience, whether it's like gender or race, I think that does create a connection, an actual connection with the musician who's performing it as well. But I wonder if the music itself reflects that, because I think one of the issues we've come across is saying, here's a piece by a Black composer or a woman composer, not just here's a piece of music. And the point at which we can take away all those definitions and those tags that we put on, I think that is when we're really just talking about music rather than,
Sure. I think that's great. And I look forward to that time when we're there. I don't know that we're there yet. And
no, absolutely not.
And all I can say is that, I see a lot of students who are bored.
What do you mean?
Like they're doing it, or they think they want to do it. They want to do music, and then like they're not going to practice that much, and they're just like they're not willing to put in all the work. And I think that ultimately there's some boredom in there, which is not something I ever felt. I always had like a big fire, but I know that I see that people often are not motivated to practice or push themselves and stuff like that. And I think that expanding the realm of what they're looking at can be very helpful. I mean, I found that it's very helpful.
Totally agree.
People.
Pivoting slightly, I'm curious. I always ask people, like, what goes through your mind when you're performing?
Well, I mean, all kinds of things.
You can swear if you want to. It's all.
No, I mean, when it's going poorly, of course. I mean, I'm thinking, like, how many nightmarish performances have I had, and what's going through my head? Probably not good things. When it's going well, I think of myself as like a conduit, a translator, and I'm trying to bring what I imagine the composer wants to the audience. And that's actually a really, it's kind of a thrilling place to be, in that spot. But certainly I've felt all kinds of like terrible useless feelings instead when it's not going well.
Yeah, I always wonder if, like, in the best of performances, I always feel like I enter a Zen state where time kind of slows down and like time doesn't matter and it's all kind of there, and it feels wonderful because it makes life make sense for a while.
It's awesome for that short period of time, and it's like addictive, and you have to get back to it, and then you have like 50 bad performances trying to get it, as I will, trying to get back there. But and, it's especially difficult. I'm sorry, in an orchestra. I mean, there's so many factors, at play when you're on stage with 100 or more people.
So that's an interesting point, though. I mean, as a conductor, I have to respond to everything that's happening, and I can't be dependent on just my mood and what I want, because I have to respond to everything around me, and that energy influences how I feel too. So like sitting in that massive sound, if things are happening that are like really different from what you're imagining, so how do you how do you square that, like, and how do you like fit within that? Because an orchestra is like, it's a weird creature. It's like 100 people, 100.
Well, like, how do I respond to I mean, I see the conductor. It's so funny to hear you say this, because obviously that's not my perspective. And like, I see so often somebody will mess up and the conductor will make a face. And I remember when I was in lab orchestra and you were on the stage, I remember that one of the first things that the conducting students were taught was like, don't reflect your feelings, right? But I see so often conductors you know, expressing their distaste or
Mm-hmm.
or so like that, what is my feeling if I see that? That's bad. But you know, so I try not to, I when I do my best, I try not to focus on that element of other people, like
Mm-hmm.
how they're feeling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's tricky, the perspective in an orchestra. You have to latch on, and you know, wherever somebody is behind you, in front of you, and you have to really be playing with them and trying to make
Mm-hmm.
music with them as if you were, you know, making chamber music, which is
Right.
very difficult
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody brings their own feelings, and they're hungry or they're tired, and it's really
No,
hard with
true.
people. But when it works, when you know, those miraculous times when it works is pretty special.
Yeah, it is. But you know, I watch or I've heard concerts where I've been part of a concert where, you know, something happens, like the violin section like completely gets off by a beat. They finally get back on, like something really not terrible, but something not good
Yeah.
happens, and it takes everyone like a collective like couple minutes to
Oh
get
yeah.
back into that moment. And to me, it's really interesting group psychology to watch an orchestra sort of, you know, moving as this organism with all these weird parts, right? To come
Trying to
together.
recover. Yeah. I still remember like some of the most horrifying moments, you know, like in an orchestra. I remember this one performance of the Beethoven Coriolan Overture.
Mm-hmm.
Conductor was conducting by memory and he messed up. And
Oh, no.
half the orchestra, you know, it was after one of these grand pauses, and half the orchestra went with him, and half the orchestra didn't. And it was like the longest, you know, 3 lines of my life that the orchestra was trying to get back on. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like we never quite recovered, you know, even though like we were ready for a fantastic concert, and it's just like some little thing like that can really throw it off. So in terms of psychology, yeah, it's really I'm sure people could write books on it.
Yeah, they should write books on it. It's super
Yeah.
complicated.
Or like
I mean,
reality
so, like,
TV or something.
what happens for you if you're playing something and it's not aligning with what's in your head? Not that it's bad, it's just not what you expect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all the time. That's like 99% of what comes out of my instrument is not what I want or expect. So I try to practice like acceptance in the performance situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I've come to realize actually that I'm not a very good judge at the time of what's coming out. Like I've felt that some concerts are just horrendous, like
Mm-hmm.
cringingly horrendous. And then if there's a recording of it, I'm like, oh,
That's
actually
pretty
pretty good. And then I felt like other times like, oh, I feel good, you know, this is
Mhm.
good. And I'm like, oh, you know, so I don't feel that I'm a very good judge. So I just try. I don't always succeed, but I try to practice like just, you know, accepting what comes out. I don't use that frame of mind at all when I practice, except, you know, maybe right before I go on stage. But yeah, I think it's important to just try to go with the feelings of the moment and you know, rely on how one has practiced.
Right. So how do you approach practice differently then? So that's more, it's less acceptance of the moment.
Yeah. You can't accept.
It's less than.
Yeah, you can't accept imperfection, I guess, right? Or you can't accept as much with the practicing. But yeah, I guess it's more Zen. I try to. I don't know. I'm not really a Buddhist or anything or a practitioner of Zen, but I try to just let go and play in a concert setting. And I don't do that when I practice. I try to
that
you know, make it better and
yeah,
you know, try all the different options that I can think of and come up with the way that I want it to go.
Yeah. I hear kids in the background, and for those of you who are joining us, Catherine's got 3 kids, and I always find this remarkable for musicians who can have this work-life balance and like have a functional relationship and have these amazing kids and like have a life outside of their instrument and their work. So I mean, are you conscious of what you need to do to like juggle all those things, or you just kind of do it?
Especially now things are really different. We're getting ready to homeschool. I'm getting ready to homeschool my children, which is not anything I would do in a normal circumstance.
Right.
But certainly my approach ever since I've had kids is I just mostly practice when they're asleep. That's when I get my stuff done. So, even we're kind of on vacation sort of now. I just practice before they get up because I don't focus or function very well when they're asking me questions. I mean, I certainly do that. They're used to it. They sleep through the oboe really well, so that's good. They've been
You taught them well.
Yeah. My husband sleeps through it somewhat less well, but we have like noise machines and stuff, and I just I do a lot of stuff late at night and I do a lot of stuff early in the morning. So I actually don't sleep all that much during a normal I'm sure you with all your travel this well, and like I don't travel all that much, but you learn to function on not that much sleep. It's been very strange for me actually to have enough sleep the last 6 months, really. It's been a lot. I like it.
Yeah, no, but it is a different mindset, definitely.
So I just try to I try to get stuff as much as I can done when they're sleeping. I also kind of practice a parenting method. Like, I'm not a helicopter parent, I free range. My children are free range.
Let them do their thing.
Until their injuries and stuff. I don't want it to get to that point. And, there's certain things they need to get done. And I'm pretty about them getting those things done. I make them practice instruments, which is funny because, my parents never made me practice anything. They told me to stop, but I make them practice. It's kind of funny.
So if they wanted to become musicians, would you discourage them or encourage them?
Oh, no, I would encourage them if they wanted to. I don't think they're going to want to. I don't know. But I wouldn't, if they wanted to do pretty much anything. I mean, like, there are a couple professions I would, be upset about, but, I think they're probably the sort of professions most parents would be upset about. I feel like if a kid wants to do something, it's not really responsible to be in their way at a certain point.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Like, connected to that, like, do you think that, it's a weird question, has motherhood changed the way you approach music? Do you see music differently? It's kind of a weird question, but like, I actually have some people say that they do sort of experience the world slightly differently, so they experience art.
I mean, I think certainly you have these experiences related to motherhood that may create like emotional response, that you didn't have, that you didn't have about certain things, or certainly certain programmatic music may have different meaning to you, but no, I don't think it affects my general approach particularly.
Okay, there's a question here. It says, what instrument do they play? Oh, probably your kids. They play.
Yeah. So my oldest and my youngest play violin, and whoa, that's loud. And the middle one plays cello. And I really wanted them to play piano, and I taught them piano when they were the two girls, the older ones, piano when they were little, and that was a massive failure. So we went to string instruments because I could really just farm that out to their teachers and say, I don't know anything about this. I'm just here to carry out their wishes, for your practice session. And so that worked pretty well. And then my oldest actually is a really beautiful singer. So she's been studying singing, and I don't know where that'll go. And she plays a little guitar and makes some really snarky songs up. And,
I love it.
I don't know where that'll go, but I'm not too concerned. I just feel like it's a part of their education, like they study math too, and they study a fair bit of music. I probably make them study more music than most kids, and they study books and science.
And part of being a well-rounded human being is,
studied Spanish and stuff. Normal kid stuff.
So final question for you. So if you were to, no, I'm going to do it the other way. So what have you not done that you absolutely want to do before you die?
Oh my God, that's a terrible question.
Well, no, there's always like things that we kind of want to accomplish that we haven't accomplished yet.
I kind of feel like that's what this time is now. That's kind of what COVID-19 is, right? Like, I'm sitting in my house with I can kind of do whatever I want inside my house that I never had time to do before, right? So, no, so I'm practicing music. I guess I kind of practice with that in mind. Like, you know, maybe I should learn this while I can still play my instrument, you know, because you never know when that's going to end.
Yeah.
Your ability to play an instrument. Like, we know so many people that have had, you know, injuries that prevent them from playing. And certainly my instrument is not one that's traditionally done for a long time, right? You know, people don't play the oboe into their 90s.
Yeah, true.
Really that much, even into their 60s. So, you know, I'm just trying to play all the music I can and enjoy it. You know, I guess in my alternate reality of being a pianist, which I could never really accomplish, you know, there's a lot of piano music that I want to play. Because so much of that music is so wonderful.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do a lot of just playing on my own, you know, like no one's ever going to hear me play this stuff on the piano, you know, but that's okay. But I'm actually pretty satisfied. Like, I don't have anything, and I mean, not saying I want to go die tomorrow, but I don't have any, like,
I know what you mean. I love that though. I love the fact that you do all this playing that you don't care for anyone to hear. Like, it's for you, you know, and for your own enjoyment. And I think that's,
well, I love music, you know, and, you know, I've always really loved it. And I think it's sometimes easy to forget that in our profession sometimes.
Yes.
I remember that, you know, we had some real idealistic colleagues, and they said, "Oh, professional musician. Those are, you know, that's an oxymoron. Those two words should never go together." And I'm very happy to have made a profession as a musician. It's a gift and a blessing. But you know, it's something I love. So so I always try to remember that. And it's easy sometimes, you know, in the grind of things of doing a job to forget that. But I always try to remind myself of that.
But it's I guess it's great to have this opportunity to hit pause and really realize that you know, you have this love and it's still there, and it doesn't matter whether you're performing with an orchestra or whatever it is. It's just, you know, you love music and you love creating music, and that, you know, that's a nice baseline to get back to that I think a lot of us forget in the profession, because you're right, it's, you get caught up in the grind, and then where are you? You're the enjoyment.
Well, how does it feel for you, like, to be conducting after? I mean, it's kind of hard for me to imagine because I'm not at a point of playing with other people really yet. Like, how does it feel to be doing what you do after like 6 months of not doing it? Is it awesome? Is it like surreal? What is it like?
I was wondering what it would be like, and I had a rehearsal today. For those of you who are watching, I am in Dallas right now, connected to the Dallas Symphony. But I was wondering what that would be like, and I got up on the podium and I took my baton, and it was like coming home. You know, it was like I never left. It's like, oh, here we are again. And
it's like riding a bike. You knew how to do it. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you know.
No, like, you wonder, is it like, I'm going to forget how to, you know, floor, wall, ceiling? But it all comes back. It's instinctive. You know, we're trained for so long and have so much experience at this point in our careers that, you know, everything's like in the body, right? It's almost not conscious anymore, a lot of it. So you can sort of, like, for me, I just press my on button. It's like, okay, these things are going to happen, and it's okay. So,
oh, that's nice.
It
I always feel even if I have like a month off from the orchestra, there's always like an acclimation period, you know. And I've never had more than like a month off or 6 weeks. I don't think I've ever had more than that. So it's the idea of sitting down and doing it again it's a little daunting. But I'm glad to hear that it was like the on button. I hope I have the on button.
Well, I think it's different for, you know, instrumentals. I mean, because you all have like these fine motor things that you need to keep in shape. I mean, your embouchure and, you know, everything. So it's a bit more physically complicated. You know, for conductors, it's mental. So, you know, I've been thinking about and studying stuff for months and months and months. So, like, that part of the job, which is the biggest part of the job, it's all still there. And this is, you know, this is in the body, and you can figure out how to do that. So, yeah, it's nice to be performing again.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it sounds like they're doing it really well there and safely, so that's great.
Yes, so we're all happy about that. But It was so nice to see you and to
It was
chat.
great to see you, Sarah, today and yesterday. It's been too long.
I know. We actually tested. We did beta testing yesterday to make sure we had our technology down. But it's been kind of awesome, and we need to, see each other in person at some point when all this crap is over. And
some Chinese food.
yeah, and we'll hang.
Yeah,
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you.
Thanks for being on, and thanks everyone. This will be on IGTV later, and it'll also be on my YouTube channel next week, and you can watch it over and over and hang with me and Katherine.
Cool.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Sarah.